Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs, and I've been informed that today is National Drink Wine Day. It's also apparently National Crab Stuffed Flounder Day. Do with this information whatever you want. Just please, be responsible. 25-year-old Gavin Kleiger, who just months ago was a shit poster boosting tweets from white supremacist Nick Fuentes and accused human trafficker Andrew Tate, is about to be granted access to your sensitive information at the Internal Revenue Service. The Washington Post first reported that a memorandum of understanding was drafted that would give Kleiger, who joined Elon Musk's so-called Doge team, access to IRS systems, including the highly secure Integrated Data Retrieval System, which contains individual taxpayer records and stuff like social security numbers, bank account information, and home addresses. Even the few IRS employees who can access this database have to abide by strict restrictions on what they can look at, with violations punishable under the law. Reports indicate Kleiger, who is basically a political appointee, would be given unfettered access to the system as long as he maintains confidentiality and destroys the records when he's finished doing whatever he's going to do with them. The Trump White House confirmed that Doge operations would target the IRS to look for fraud, which is a word that's been used by the administration to describe anything or anyone it simply doesn't like. The former high-ranking official at the Treasury Department under Biden's presidency remarked on just how unprecedented this all is. Lily Batchelder posted on Twitter, quote, "This is deeply concerning. I'm unaware of any instance of political appointees at Treasury or IRS having access to this database. I didn't, and the political appointees on my team did not. Providing a political appointee with access to these files opens the door to a violation of Section 7217, which prohibits the president, vice president, and executive office personnel staff from directly or indirectly interfering with taxpayer audits and investigations. It also opens the door to Doge affiliates unlawfully adjusting Americans' tax liabilities or refunds." Basically, the reason why you don't give political appointees access to this sort of information is because you can't trust them to not use it for political purposes, like to target their opponents, something Elon Musk has already signaled he wants to do. The Doge team also wants to pry into Social Security databases. Over the weekend, the top official at the Social Security Administration was forced to resign after she refused to give Musk's boys access to the system, which contains the private information of millions of people who receive Social Security payments. Musk has made completely baseless and totally absurd claims that tens of millions of deceased people are receiving Social Security payments. It was a claim repeated this week by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who is garnering a reputation of being a lying dumbass. Here she was on Fox News.
President Trump has directed Elon Musk and the Doge team to identify fraud at the Social Security Administration. They haven't dug into the books yet, but they suspect that there are tens of millions of deceased people who are receiving fraudulent Social Security payments.
Okay, it appears that this claim that everyone is repeating comes from Musk's inability to read or understand Social Security tables, which do include the names of millions of people who are deceased. But this isn't something Musk just discovered. It's well known. In fact, an audit of the databases conducted in 2023 by the Social Security Administration's Inspector General found over 6 million dead people in there. But here's the key part. These dead people aren't receiving any benefits. There are controls to prevent that, something Musk either isn't aware of or won't let get in the way of the narrative he wants to spread about mass fraud in the program, which can later be used to gut Social Security. As Musk and his Doge team dig deeper into sensitive government records and enter murkier legal territory, especially given that Musk is now up to his ears in federal ethics law violations, the White House is now claiming in court that actually Elon Musk has nothing to do with Doge. In a filing this week with a court in Washington, D.C., White House official Joshua Fisher claimed, quote, Mr. Musk is an employee in the White House. He is not an employee of the U.S. Doge Service. Mr. Musk is not the U.S. Doge Service Administrator. Well, that would be news to everyone who's been paying attention to this for weeks and heard President Trump repeatedly praise Musk for the job he's doing at Doge, and heard Musk repeatedly praise himself for the work Doge is doing. The administration's absurd claim about Musk came in response to lawsuits trying to prevent Doge teams from accessing federal data and from mass firing workers, citing, among other things, Musk's numerous conflicts of interest. A bad beat for Amazon workers in North Carolina. The fledgling Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, or CAUSE, lost in its bid to organize a facility in the city of Garner. If successful, it would have been only the second Amazon warehouse to unionize. The vote wasn't very close in the end, 2,447 against joining, only 829 for joining. But the workers were fighting on extremely hostile territory. North Carolina's union rate is only 2.4%, and in the run-up to the election, it became evident why. Not only did Amazon deploy a racist divide-and-conquer strategy, the city's police helped bust the union too. Italo Medias Marsano told Labor Notes, quote, Amazon's strategy is very blatantly, get the Latino vote. What we hear from people in all departments and all shifts is that Amazon is painting CAUSE as a black union and saying all the black folks are lazy and the Hispanics are the ones that work the hardest, and the union is only trying to protect lazy people. Another worker told Labor Notes that the Garner Police Department acts more like a private security force for Amazon, a reflection of the company's economic power as the largest employer in the town. And that one night before the election, Garner police arrested a member of a separate union, the Amazon Labor Union, who had come to support the campaign. They also arrested community members who were handing out flyers to support the union. And Amazon fired a worker who was also flyering by the warehouse, which would be a clear violation of labor rights. Well, to the extent those rights functionally exist anymore. The Labor Department under Donald Trump is undergoing a rapid transformation, wiping away most of the pro-worker policy that had emerged during the Biden administration. And by pro-worker policy, I mean stuff that made it slightly easier to unionize and seek recourse for violations of workers' rights. The National Labor Relations Board's acting general counsel, William B. Cohen, took the formal step of rescinding dozens of memorandum issued by his predecessor, Jennifer Abruzzo, who showed a willingness to antagonize corporate power. On the chopping block, the NLRB's position that college athletes are employees under the National Labor Relations Act and thus able to unionize, that captive audience meetings violate workers' rights, also that tactics like non-compete agreements, stay or pay traps, and certain confidentiality and non-disparagement clauses also illegally harm workers. The rescissions also indicate the NLRB will abandon an approach that allowed workers to seek broader compensation when they're victimized by unfair labor practices. And the board also looks poised to abandon its CMEX decision, which held that a company could be forced to recognize and bargain with a union if that company committed unfair labor practices during the union election. And finally, in an attack on disabled workers, the new acting general counsel rescinded a policy that allowed for mail-in union ballots. That was implemented at the onset of the pandemic in 2020. Sadly, this is all what happens when Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House and don't bother codifying any of these pro-worker reforms into law when they have power. The modest gains made in the class war over the last 4 years can now just be wiped out overnight. And workers will have to rely on themselves, not the Democratic Party, to get them back. If it is even possible for the United States to be more embarrassed on the world stage than it already is, then J.D. Vance is going for it. The vice president flew to Germany last week to lecture leaders about free speech, even as the administration he's a part of back home is punishing people in groups for their speech, whether it be anti-genocide protesters on college campuses, news organizations that don't use the preferred language, or members of Congress opposed to Trump's agenda. When the right talks about free speech, we all know what they really mean. They want to stretch the bounds of acceptable speech to include incitements to hate and violence against minority groups, so-called speech that can be used by neo-fascist organizations to rally support and eventually gain political power and crush democratic institutions and entire populations of people. It is true, Europe does have more speech restrictions than the US, but that's because the continent has already once been destroyed by Nazis, which is still clinging to its collective memory, but only just barely. Far-right parties running on xenophobia have taken power in a number of European nations and are ascendant in even more, including in Germany, where Vance delivered his remarks at a security conference. Vance recited from a list of so-called egregious violations of speech across the European continent, but it was mostly full of lies and distortions that left Europeans thinking to themselves, who is this fucking guy? The German elections are just a few days away, and polls show that the far-right extremist Alternative for Germany Party, or AfD, has surged from the fourth most popular party in the country to now second, behind the center-right CDU party. Vance attempted to boost AfD's popularity further by encouraging German politicians to break a long-standing firewall in which all parties agree not to form a coalition with the AfD, given the party's, similarities to Hitler. During his visit, Vance met with the leader of the Alternative for Germany party, along with representatives of other political parties. Shadow President Elon Musk has also been promoting the AfD in the run-up to the election, and Vance defended the billionaire's meddling in German politics with this comment.
And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Hey, you know that little girl who asked world leaders to do something about global warming? Yeah, if we have to deal with her, then you're just going to have to accept the world's richest man trying to rat fuck your population and aid a bunch of neo-Nazis. Okay? No one laughed at J.D. Vance's attempt at humor. Everyone thought it was pathetic. He's the vice president of the United States, and he's complaining about a teenage girl. In the US, Senator Bernie Sanders reacted to Vance's remarks with a post on social media that read, quote, "European friends do not accept lectures on democracy and freedom of speech from an administration that denies the 2020 election results and is now suing and intimidating news outlets whose reporting they don't like." The senator added in a separate post, quote, "We're in solidarity with our friends in Germany who are standing tall against oligarchy, authoritarianism, and racism, and the AfD, the Musk-supported party." People who are stupid enough to think Elon Musk has a genuine commitment to free speech are also stupid enough to think he's a good father. This week, Musk called for journalists at 60 Minutes to face, quote, "long prison sentences" because he didn't like how the show edited an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. That's more extreme than any speech restrictions on offer in Europe right now. And Trump's border czar, the abominable Tom Homan, claimed on Monday he asked the Department of Justice to investigate Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez after she used her speech to inform migrants in the U.S. of their legal rights.
That's exactly the question I posed to the Deputy Attorney General. I asked him to look into it. I says, through my career, someone steps in front of you, in between you and the person you're arresting or repeating. Yeah, that's a violation. But at what point do you cross the line on saying you're educating people versus you're teaching them how to evade ICE arrest? So I've asked that question to the Department of Justice for clear guidance so I can share that with the officers of ICE. So we're looking for that clear direction so we can start taking action on people that want to evade, who want to help educate these people to evade ICE. So hopefully any day now we get that guidance sent out to the field.
JD, are you hearing this, bud? It sounds like the attacks against free speech are coming from inside the White House. Anyway, while Vance and Musk attempt to reorient European politics to the 1930s, President Donald Trump is trying to bring back the late 18th century. Trump posted and then pinned to his profile on social media the quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." It's a line that's attributed, perhaps apocryphally, to the French dictatorial ruler, Napoleon. Trump isn't a Napoleon nerd, but the guys whispering in his ear are. Okay, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Ohio. It was sent in by Allie and Josh in Cleveland. Enjoy. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Josh. Show's over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV, subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and follow us on social media. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you tomorrow.